I feel like I've been resistant to some of the more recent waves, labeling them as fads or something like that. With this one, I'm like, nope,
I,
I'm not
I,
missing this one.
yeah, I don't see how this one doesn't take hold.
I would like to capitalize on it in some manner.
Hmm.
Um, but the capitalization on it would be a bonus to the fact that I'm just going to plug into it. Because I think if I don't, then I'm straight up left behind.
Hello and welcome to Unqualified Advice, an entertaining show for entertainment purposes. Join us as we talk about running our businesses, what we've been learning, and how we're applying lessons from academia and real life as entrepreneurs and investors. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Topics discussed represent opinions represented by parties with different circumstances than your own and should not be taken as advice. Any discussion of securities or other investments should not be relied upon as investment advice. Consult your personal financial advisor and perform your own due diligence. Podcast hosts, guests, and clients of Fig Social Capital may own positions in securities discussed in this podcast.
Merry post-apocalyptic Christmas or something, Sean.
Yes, Merry pre-New Year.
Happy
We're
Hanukkah.
here.
I think it's still going on.
What?
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, Happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. Yes, Happy Hanukkah. It is still going on. I think we're on night 5 or 6 tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If
December 29th. So
wherever you are in the temporal
we're wrong.
space listening to this. Yeah, that's where we're at in our headspace, just to give everybody a little reference point in time. Well, Dan, how was your Christmas holiday?
It was good. It was quiet for us. We did not travel, nor did we host, which is pretty remarkably unusual. I think that's happened like one time in the past decade, and we were in Malaysia that one time, so it was different. But this time we had kids. We did our little Christmas open under the tree stuff, and it was fun. And then we went up to see some other family that live in the area and had dinner with them. It was nice.
That's very fun. That sounds like a very nice little Christmas.
It was.
My wife and I went up and visited my parents up in Indiana. So we spent the holiday in the northern climes where it was a nice balmy 50 most of the time. Definitely not as cold as it could have been or used to be. I feel but a really good time with the family though. It was kind of like a foggy Christmas. Really, you couldn't really see like more than about 500 yards Christmas Day. It was pretty cool. Instead of a white Christmas, it was kind of like a London.
A different kind of white Christmas. The air was white.
yeah. So it was cool. Yeah, we also we spent some time just digging around the Midwest there. One thing I kind of want to dig into, if we can hop right into it, we did like a little gift exchange, right? For like a kind of a white elephant type gift exchange where we were just buying, just one or two gifts rather than buying gifts for everybody. And so I went to the mall here in Houston looking for, just some random ideas of where to, there used to be able to go like to Brookstone or a Sharper Image and find some kind of cool, like, maybe a little hokey, a little tacky, but still kind of, fun little gifts that you might play with for a couple months or, might be on your desk for a couple months.
Gadgets, they make you think, or isn't this cool? More novelty than purpose. But
yeah, it's like, hey, here's a weird application of this new technology we're working on, or, and I was thinking about it. They're like stores of solutions looking for problems, really.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're selling.
Yeah. This thing only massages your calves, but you want it.
Get in the right size.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So no, but we didn't have any of those stores left here in Houston, and we were talking pre-record, and you were saying it's harder to find those kind of gifts. Like those stores don't exist, but then also, do those things exist online at all?
Those stores?
I mean, I guess. I mean, like, yeah, the stores.
The stuff definitely does. It's just
stuff
changed.
Does, but I never how does it enter your mind space now?
Well, right, yeah, and I think my comment to you was like, I got to see what some teen and preteen boys were up to with playing with their gifts that they had received, and of course, there's some like more serious gifts, but some of the playful ones were things that made me think like, oh, this is clearly on Amazon. It's not on Sharper Image anymore. Like Sharper Image isn't where people go. It's going to be bought on Amazon, and it's going to be sold by a seller whose name is IFFUKKKKLM, QP, and that's going to be that's it. But I don't see these things. I don't know that they're popular. I don't even know that they're options, I think, because I'm not out searching for them. Therefore, my algorithm isn't giving them to me. I don't see them on Instagram ads. I don't see them on my Amazon homepage, because like I'm not looking for this stuff. Therefore, the algorithm isn't serving it up to me, right? And that was my comment, to which you said,
to which I said, yeah, hold up, we got to get into this, because this is like, I was thinking about this in terms of one, right? Like, so if I don't have an algorithm that I'm, that's feeding me this information, one thing I was thinking about during doing my Christmas shopping, and then actually in a little post-Christmas shopping experiences, was there used to be a little bit of a joy and wonder in going and wandering around a space, and not really knowing what you were looking for, and not like have to like, let me think and like come up with a list and like, oh, here's this plate stores I need to go visit to see that. It's just like, I'm gonna wander and, hey, that looks interesting. What catches my interest? That doesn't exist in the same way it does today. With the digitization of retail, or the e-commerce.
Right. You have an infinite shelf, but you can only really like legitimately see six things on your screen at a time, and you can only scroll for so long. It's not like walking aisles.
Mm-hmm. And it's and I wonder, like, the future of the American mall. What does it look like? Because when's the last time you've been to a mall?
In Asia, malls are still like the place over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the last time you've been to a mall? Was in Asia?
Yeah, well, I was in Philippines. Yeah, I was for the week. I spent right next to the mall, and the mall is where you eat. The mall is where you hang out. The mall is where the mall. That's like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Still highly popular. I was just telling some of the other, like, you can go get like really legit Filipino food in this particular mall, or you can get McDonald's. You can get Rolex. You can also get H&M. It was all right there.
Awesome.
In that mall.
So when's the last time you've been to an American mall here in the States?
Question. Pre-kids? We're talking years. With kids, we live really close to this outlet mall in Castle Rock, and there's like a Carter's store, H&M, and Columbia.
So more of an outlet.
outerwear.
So it's like an outdoor exterior
outdoor mall. Yeah. And it's really nice to walk around, and also like we can get a new kid's puffer jacket for like $18, right? Like, so
yeah, absolutely, makes sense.
We do go.
I get it,
but it's mostly like discount clothes that we're looking for.
Yeah, that makes total sense, Dan. Makes perfect sense. So I visited one here in Houston, old indoor style mall called Memorial City. It's on the west side, and then and it's about 20% empty, and just like a lot of the shops are. What's curious to me is I like the particularly the larger department stores are very much obviously struggling hard. Some of the smaller shops that seem to be doing well are like specific name brands, like they're atomizing a bit, right? Lego. Where like it's like, oh, here's the Levi's shop, here's the Ray-Ban shop, here's like very specific. It's not like a collection of stuff. It's now, here is our one specific store product. We need much smaller spaces for that. So like the larger scale stores seem to be really taking it more on the chin, and then you have a lot of really weird little things of like,
in the kiosks,
and even like people, it's like they're buying clothes on Alibaba and reselling them, type of thing, like really low rent, which is fine. It's like it's
an observation.
Yeah. And so it's like the entire experience is like of the indoor mall has completely changed. Like half.
Okay, how would you compare it though? So like what you're doing right now is comparing it to some sort of construct that you have in your mind.
Yes. So what I'm doing is I'm just right. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, all right. So I'm imagining like the booming 1980s, 1990s mall space, what you see in Asia, that mall space, what that kind of was for a community, and now what those spaces have become and like aren't anymore, and what I'm thinking like those spaces need to become, and like what the communities, how the communities can like reabsorb those spaces in interesting ways. Because when we were in Indianapolis, do you remember ever visiting? For those of you who've ever been
Circle
to
Center?
anywhere, it's just like any other giant mall in your probably city, but Circle Center in Indianapolis, giant indoor mall in downtown. I kind of think like the Houston Galleria, or I mean, not like the Mall of America. That place is. I wonder what the Mall of America is like today. I bet that's a weird.
Yeah, I've never been ever.
It's a weird place. Wonder how that retail mega structure is holding up.
But it has like entertainment and stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
Experiences too.
Yeah, so
I feel like
probably
those are the
lean
malls
more
that
into
are
the
doing fine.
experiences. I would think they would have to. But no. So anyway, we're in this downtown mall, at least 2/3 empty, just empty.
That's
and
remarkable.
and it like
Wait,
other,
we're in
like, there
Indianapolis
were
now?
2 store closing stuff. There was 2 stores that were closing while we were
Circle
there.
Center's 2/3 empty.
At least.
I've talked to you about my theory around capital flight, right?
Well, let's get into that. Let's recircle on that today,
Okay,
because I think that's kind of also where my headspace is at around this.
Yeah.
It felt it's a fine space. Like there's all this like usable square footage and volume of covered space that could be something, but really, what can you do with the dang thing, right? It's like
Right.
It's set up in such a way that how do you repurpose this? How do you make this at all useful to the community rather than just being this monolithic graveyard, essentially?
It's similar to the discussion of like, can't we make these office towers into residential? And it's like, yes, but it's going to take 1 time, 2 government permitting that doesn't take 4 years, and a whole boatload of money.
Yeah, and a whole boatload of money.
Which means someone has to risk that money in search of reward.
Yeah.
Or it has to be done by someone who doesn't need reward, which is usually government. Yeah.
So I was curious on the flight while I was sitting in the airport for 8 hours yesterday, actually,
sound like you had a really great travel day.
Yeah, there was I think 5 tornadoes in Houston. I ended up hearing.
Oh my God. Okay.
So Houston travel was wrecked. When we got in, it was 1:30 and the airport was packed, just jam packed, because people were just stuck there. Yeah. And like it was, I just felt so bad for everybody. I was so glad that we were fortunate enough to be getting home as late as it was. Thank God for all the airport workers that had to suffer through that. Like I know they were just in hell, but they were miracle workers yesterday. To those in Houston, kudos to you all. Anyway, as I was saying, I had this time in the airport, dealing with it, like waiting for the storms to clear and for us to get cleared to take off. I was looking up, kind of the history of the mall downtown Indianapolis, and found out that, it just recently last year got acquired, and they're basically forcing all the businesses that are out. So, okay, they're trying to empty it out, and they're going to, they went to the term they put it, reintegrate it into the city. Which basically
I like
to me
the idea.
which to me means, and like they kind of, then there's a couple sketches up, and basically they're atomizing it, right? They want to turn it into an outdoor style mall, less not the big anchor department stores, more boutique stores. And I think this is going to be the trend that we see if you're going to be trying to revitalize a downtown area, is that you're going to have to make it much more smaller spaces that can be consumed in different ways for different purposes. But to be able to do that, I don't know how you do it, because I think what you were saying, is this where your capital flight theory comes in at all? And like, how do we actually fund this kind of transformation or revitalization where it's needed? Or is it
okay? Well, this ties into another thing that's in our notes around like investing in real estate around demographic changes. So no, my capital flight thing is very much related to, I don't know what would have been called white flight back in the late 80s and early 90s. I think that's when it was occurring, right? And it's all like the narrative, I think, was all around crime and crack and drugs and all the stuff, and that's why all the white people left.
Like all the 80s dystopian action movies set in
Exactly. And
shitty New York,
but then everyone moved
porn
to
stores everywhere.
to suburbia. And what I wonder is like, is that narrative just wrong? It's the narrative that makes everybody feel like they were powerless to change it and they had to leave, versus just like revealed versus stated versus revealed preferences of,
yes,
well, you have a couple of kids and you kind of want more bedrooms and a little bit more square footage for your own sanity and maybe a yard, because that way when your kids go crazy you say, outside please, go play.
What we're saying is the result that we see then, it's like, oh, all this like desertion happens, like, oh, we were just escaping this thing that it became, but no, it became that because you escaped it.
Correct. So that's why I call it capital flight. And I think what we might be beginning to see is it kind of happening again, because millennials are having kids later, and the hollowing out of downtown is going to be not the same, but similar.
Yes. I'm thinking the exact same thing of to sustain these city centers. And this happens, right? It just seems to happen every couple of generations.
Natural rhythm.
The city centers just get gutted. I remember when we were kids, it was, let's rebuild the city centers, and bring everybody back to downtown. And very much in our ethos, and my ethos growing up was like, oh, I want to live somewhere and live downtown. Like that was what I wanted to do.
Same.
And now I'm sitting here downtown and everybody like is moving away. And so I like, it's just, I think it's just a freaking generational cycle. So like these downtowns are going to have to go through this, downturn and revitalization. What do they look like coming out of that next revitalization? And are we getting there? Because I honestly,
well, the next revitalization would be when my kids start to move in.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because Gen X wasn't a big enough generation, nor did it create a big enough generation to heavily demographically affect the trajectory that's happening. It's if you had atomized generations, then you wouldn't see this ebb and flow, I think. But because you have the boomers and then the millennials, the two biggest generations in American history, come in and out of life phases almost all at the same time, you get these big boom and busts with let's call it lifestyle preference changes, and then what manifests out of those changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, going back to the mall, this ethos of trying to change the trajectory of the downtown area is where I kind of want. In B school, we had this one project. It was all about malls. It was about the future of malls, right? Like malls were declaring bankruptcies. Simon Property was doing like a thing. There's just a lot. It was an easy thing to talk about and sort of pontificate on what may be the future of malls. And I forget if it's my group or a different group, didn't matter. But one of the thought processes was you're going to have more like experiential and entertainment options within the mall. You're going to have to make it into a destination, and then shopping is sort of like secondary, like default included, but not, some people are going to go there because they need to shop. Other people are going to go there because like there's a legit really nice restaurant there, and there's like a play space and something. And then, oh yeah, let's go take a look at Crate and Barrel real quick.
Something
like that, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened in a lot of the open air mall spaces that came up in the last 10 years, 15 years even. I'd say there were a lot more spaces built like that. And
if you look at like Simon Properties, the renovations and stuff, like that's definitely where things had gone.
And I think it's probably the path we continue to see too. Like, cause I don't know why that's the path at this point that makes the most sense to get any traction with, a generation that is having more and more kids now. They need.
Well, I mean, when if your only need is to shop, you can do it on your phone from home.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's a specialty item, at which point, like, that's kind of different.
Well, even a specialty item, you're going to be able to find it better on your phone at this day and age.
That's true, but I would also wonder, like, are you going to the mall for that? I mean, I know you can buy a Tesla in the mall here, but like, some of these other I don't know what you want to call some of these specialty. I'm trying to think of a decent example where it's like, no, actually, you're going to go to, scratch that. I'm not coming up with an example.
Well, like, I mean, that's kind of like, again, why I miss sharper image is there's all these like kind of junky things, but like sometimes there's something that's really cool, and I want to go play with all of them a little bit and give them all a tactile hands-on try and be like, ooh yeah, this one resonates with my cortex or whatever, and gives me the vibes. So I want to take this one home or gift this one to so and so. Like you don't get that have that experience with. There's a picture of it online. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Well, it's true. I mean, I remember giving a gift, and then like once I know it was received, calling them up, and be like, "How is it? Do I need to buy another one?"
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I forget what we were just talking about.
Well, let's go back, let's circle back to city centers, city revitalization, and sort of like what you're thinking about mid-tier.
So
cities.
like I'm imagining like there's all these cities I like across the United States that are, for lack of a better descriptor, to mid-sized city, like anything from even Lafayette, smaller mid-sized city, but to Indianapolis, Cleveland, Long Beach, all kind of seeing like Denver. When I was in Denver last year, in the downtown Denver, I just feel like all the city centers kind of suck now. Like going down and like being downtown is not a pleasant experience at this point in time. And that sucks because like when I travel, I like to travel to cities, and and it's like, okay, I'm going to these cities, and they're like, it's just not they're not pleasant places to visit at the moment, and I don't know I think a lot of it is also you have real estate that's you're not gonna be able to afford to actually live anywhere near there, so you
can't live there. Yeah,
you have too much. You have all this. Yeah, all these, this vacuum of that creates this sprawl because this cost vacuum of like, okay, here's where it's cheaper to build and zoning, and
like no residential over there, even though like half the city would like to live there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know how without like majorly like we have to overhaul. We absolutely have to overhaul our zoning and our construction codes, make them a little more. I understand the need for like all these codes in different places. Like the way you build a home in Houston is way different than the way you need to build a home in Denver, obviously. But there's no reason we can't have a more standardized coding system and a more standardized, zoning and permitting process to help, expedite and make this just actually reduce the cost of getting these projects done. It seems like there's so much money.
Reduce the bureaucracy with the aim of getting the same result.
Yeah. Yes. Like that's one step that needs to happen. But then like outside of that, like I also think I don't know how you make anything sustainable without a certain level of density. Like when you go to Chicago, it's a little different. Like there's a certain level of density that's keeping this like these areas a little more robust and self-rejuvenating, self-sustaining.
Yes.
So if we don't ever get to those levels of density in certain areas, we're just going to continue to have this generational by generational up and down cycle of build and blight. And I think like from what I hear when you travel to these countries in Asia where they have a small city for them is New York in some places.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was in the second city, Cebu, and that's like 3+ million.
Yeah.
And I think that was city proper. Like if you do metro area, it's, a lot.
A lot of places where I think that it's, I don't know that's different. I need to go travel and check this out. And it also, you have to see it over a span of years to probably actually appreciate it. But I think until we get to the point where we actually can get sustainable density in these cities, like we're going to just have this cycle of boom and blight that continues.
And I don't know that you like I don't want to be the pessimist, but I don't know that you're going to see the density required.
No, I don't know what it takes to get there.
American preference changes.
Yeah.
And American land use changes.
Yeah. American preference changes is the hard one too. It was the hard one.
It was way hard.
That's the hard one.
But there are like hints of, there being plenty of preference that isn't allowed to blossom. to your point of like, trying to live downtown, and it's like, well, the schools are a 1 out of 10 and 2,000 square feet costs 1.5 million. And it's like, well, I mean, you got to be doing really well to be able to afford that and to stuff yourself into that square footage with needing to also pay for private schools, because that's what you're going to end up doing. I'm not saying, I'm not
because
voting one way or another, but that's what's going to happen.
If you can afford that,
exactly.
you're not going to settle for the 1 out of 10 school unless you just don't have kids. Like,
right. But then that doesn't, what does that do to the fabric of that area,
that community, and make it ever, you're never going to build something.
You're just aiding that school remaining a 1.
Yes.
Right. Like by not changing the economics of the width with which cost of living could, the width of the band of cost of living that could exist there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of look at it as our neighborhood. Like, it seems to be an American preference that everything kind of be the same. So either you're going to have you go downtown and you get the properties that like the people can't afford, but like they're definitely not up to code. No inspector's been in them for 25 years. There's probably mold and it's really tiny. It wouldn't fit anyone's modern day preferences, but that family can live there because of all of those things that are broken. But then as soon as it gets renovated and retouched and updated to market preferences, and the financial reward was enough that some developer took a chance on it, then you end up with the 1.5+ million dollar property. There's so much to untangle here. Like
there is, and
really
it's
apart.
Like I was just having these complicated feels, like going back to these cities that I'm seeing, and like, and I see, not that I don't see signs of it in the larger city of Houston too. There's still there's signs of it here too. But I think it's at a more accelerated pace there, or a more drastic, or maybe just like I've had distance, like, and come back, and
you've had distance. That is true.
Like
I would say
there's
more
snapshots
economic,
rather than a slow change of
more
time.
Economic dynamism in Houston, more change.
No, I think so. Yeah, I think there's
like the turnover is faster, so you get a graph that looks like this, whereas Indianapolis is a little bit more like this.
Yeah,
or something.
I think that's possible.
So it's more like to your point, more tangible.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. And I will say, like, Lafayette, like, seemed to have a lot of new construction. Like, so, like, as far as the smaller mid-sized city, I think is doing a little stronger. Like, they have a big.
They're in like the top 20 highest appreciating property values of last year.
Okay, so the saddest thing about it though is I saw at least a dozen brand new restaurants, like brand new buildings, brand new build outs, every single one fast food.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just like there's a brand new Popeyes, a brand new yes. Chick-fil-A, a brand new Cane's, a brand new KFC, like name your fried chicken, Name
your fried chicken.
And like out on towards the highway, there was brand new hotels, brand new fast food, and then the campus is changing wildly though. That Chauncey's gone.
The strip mall thing?
It's demolished.
Really?
It's just it's a flat space, and most of the levee, not most, a third of the levee is a flat space. 9 Irish is still standing, and then everything around it is leveled and blocked off.
Neon Cactus?
It's still there, unfortunately.
But
they're trying to, I don't know. It sounds like they're doing something pretty big. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like another year.
Oh, it will be. I mean, how many years has it been since it's been?
But yeah, so like the smaller size city, like they seem to be doing pretty well because I think people are flocking in that direction. Like, and then you have the like the Noblesville and Zionsvilles and Carmels of the Indianapolis area, or the Cadies and Woodlands of this area,
yes.
and I'm sure what Aurora and what's in Denver.
Parker, Castle Rock, Highlands Ranch,
where you're getting like massive growth and like this everything's new, just replicated,
and it's within reach of like choice employers too. Like here in Denver, there's a Denver Tech Center or something, and you can imagine the kind of employers that are there. Plus, like Lockheed has tons of facilities around Denver. There's a lot of choice employers around here, and there are in Indianapolis too. I was just, like if you could be like in the St. Louis area, there's a suburb, O'Fallon and St. Charles. St. Charles in particular is like a beautiful little city. And if you're a software developer, you could work at MasterCard, make 150 plus, and a nice house costs 354.
Jeez.
You're banking on early retirement on that kind of trajectory if you keep things within check or build out a big army of rental homes or something, like that is a good life right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not bad at all. And that it's the employers keep moving to those areas because there's people that, then they have a population pool. So it's self-replicating there. And then if they wanted to build or, move to a city center at this point in time, I think actually they could probably get a pretty good deal on office space if they wanted it.
You could, but then you wouldn't get anybody wanting to do an hour and a half commute each way.
Yeah. So you're
really rough traffic in most of these cities.
Absolutely. Or if you're a non-office based business, like you need some sort of production, like there's no way you're putting that anywhere in a dense area, likely because you're going to build something out new in a warehouse space outside of town where the land's cheap. You don't have to come in and renovate something. Renovation is extremely expensive when you're talking about pipes
old
and
brick buildings and tight alleyways,
high voltage industrial system, industrial wiring. It's not just the stuff you put in from the get go because you're like, I want my machine there, and there, and so I'm not going to go retrench a concrete floor and put it in later.
Right. But I do want my apartment to look like that,
Yeah,
I know. Exposed brick and the polished concrete and the exposed HVAC system. And it all sounds really nice.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I don't know. It's just, I feel like we're I think we're in a moment of, not a moment, an age of flux in those spaces, which I guess we always are, but I just
always
noticed it.
Yeah. But it's moving away. I think it's moving away from what we have spent the past decade plus.
Yeah.
As our preference, if you will, right? And like that's when our life changed suddenly, and the moving to the suburbs was not a choice; it was just what occurred to us. Mm-hmm. It was a shock to our system, and now we've clearly fully embraced it, along with a whole bunch of other people. COVID just accelerated it by a lot.
Mm-hmm. So another few years, it'll be a good time to buy property in the downtown centers and then let it flip. No, I don't. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what was on my head for my trip to Indiana, Dan. That was a long answer to your one initial question.
Yeah.
What's on your mind this week?
Well, I mean, piggybacking, I had dinner with a mutual, and she used to live downtown Denver, and it was just, she was talking about like a couple of weeks back or something like that, being back in downtown proper and going on a walk and kind of hitting the old coffee shops and different things. And it's like, it's just harder. It isn't what it used to be. It doesn't have that same vibe. So like what she misses about living down there, what wasn't, she felt like it wasn't present anymore. Yeah.
So yeah.
So how piggybacking off of what
how long ago had they moved out? Pandemic timeframe?
No, I feel like they bought in 22 or early 23. It was right around the same time as us.
I think it was ahead of us. Like after the pandemic, everything shifted too.
Well, yes, for
sure. It was like basically pre and post, like that 20 to late 20 to 22. Basically, there was just of
yes.
Things.
Well, that's exactly. That's when rates were still low, houses were going for like 100 over ask in some markets, and then rates went up and everything's anyway. Home builders were a great investment, and now it's probably time to like let go of them for a little bit.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what's new on my side? I have been living in I've been living in AI land a lot, and
I love it
more and more, and trying to just now I'm here to not talk about like any sort of final decisions, like this is my tech stack and I'm really loving it. It's more just here to say, like, I have been playing with Cursor and Lovable and Bolt, all three of which are, sort of AI assisted ways to build software. I still have a lot to figure out, but it is also just completely remarkable how quickly you can go from not being a software developer to getting way more than a hello world up and running. And yeah, it's the future of code is like using English, which is nuts.
It absolutely is nuts. But I think it makes perfect sense. It's,
well, the layers of abstraction keep getting further and further. The languages keep getting friendlier and friendlier. So yes, it makes sense that eventually we reach English.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. It's not surprising to me on a base level. It's cool. It's maybe surprising we're starting to see it. Felt like something we'd never see, but yeah, I think the no code of code, basically being able to build these things without having to understand code is going to be where we're at. At least on relatively simple, like application based level stuff. Like as you get into networking, interconnectivity, I don't know.
There's always going to be a layer of technical where technical people are needed and thrive. But I think more and more business people or product managers, even project managers, people who can kind of like organize and communicate their ideas are going to really, really excel and need far less help by the technical people. I mean, even just like building out a feature where action happens, email is sent. That's simple. And I think today a lot of people will be like, well, duh, that's easy. Just make it happen. And I'm like, it was not that many years ago where it's like, well, first we got to get the like domain and all that kind of stuff. You kind of still have to do that now. And then you're going to have to set up an email server. You're going to buy the hardware and then load up an operating system and then load up the email software, configure all of it, test it, make sure it works. Now you've got to go back and build your other server that's going to run your software, that's going to talk to your email server to make an action happen. It's in 20 years, it's come a long way. 40 years. Yeah.
All I heard was just do it. I don't know what you mean.
Yes. I'll shut up now. There's an element when I say these things, I'm just like, I think old man is like, you know how hard it was in my day.
So you said Cursor, lovable?
Yeah, lovable. LOVABLE.
And Bolt. Okay.
I would say Bolt is probably the friendliest for non-technical people. You're still going to get a whole bunch of roadblocks, but I would say have your ChatGPT window open and then open up Bolt and then start, when you get stuck or things are weird, start asking ChatGPT questions. And you'd be, I think, surprised how far down a rabbit hole you might get. You may not build software, but you're going to be much more familiar with the process of building software, I think, because you're going to see some of it happen in front of you, which is also just remarkable.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a SaaS idea that I'm chasing. So I'm going to try to get as far down the process of building it myself as possible. And then,
is this the one we had talked about previously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, if I can get that idea validated by people spending money on it, then I'm, hire someone to really flush out my, I don't know, the things that I didn't do well or something.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. So, any insights from your, other than, what you've mentioned here, any
my insights so far is like
you wanted to share?
You still have to know software development in some way. Well, okay. So like, the architecture of what you're going to build still has to be decided and communicated. So for me, I'm going in thinking like, oh, I want the software to look like this when someone appears. and then they're going to see the pricing tiers, and then they're going to see like a sign up login, and then they're going to see this step and that step and this step. And so I can explain what I want my experience as a client of the software to be. And so I explain that to these code builders, or the AI assisted IDEs or whatever you want. One problem is that I haven't defined for it what kind of architecture that I want it to be building around. I haven't told it what kind of authentication that I want it to use. I haven't told it what kind of packages, libraries, or languages that I want it to use. And so this first prompt gets pretty far. It's pretty interesting. And then the second prompt might use some other library or sort of not be holistic and consistent with the way it's building. So instead, you kind of have to go in and define your technical pieces first. Like I want to build a React app, and I want to use these JavaScript libraries and these icon libraries and these font libraries, and you build all that out.
You give it your boundary conditions, essentially.
Right, and those kind of have to be repeated ad nauseum. Cursor has like a config file that you can kind of like load in your preferences ahead of time.
Okay.
So that it's sort of, I don't know how it works in terms of whether it's like resubmitting those every single time. That seems like a huge token problem, but yeah. So it's just, again, early stages of playing. I spent past couple of weeks just like playing with the tools with no aim, and then trying to decide which tool I'm going to stick with, and then watching a bunch of YouTube videos on from people who like are legit software developers who can walk you through like, this is what needs to happen without the AI help. And since, basically get me to the point of give me everything I don't know, so that I can sort of not wireframe, but like, put the skeleton up so that the AI can climb the rest of the stuff.
I got you. That's I'm fascinated to see what you build. I really want to go poke around here. Wish I had some better ideas of like something to actually execute.
Well, that's one of the questions I had for you, actually.
Yeah, I know.
What does oil and gas need? Why aren't we creating a software studio at this point where it's like vertically integrated AI solutions to your problems?
We have that division. They generate about $500 million in revenue a year for us right now in SLB, actually.
You productize AI solutions?
It's our digital integration division, essentially, and they have like a big AI team that is looking at integrating AI into different use cases.
So you're saying we missed the boat?
No, what I'm saying is we're right at the perfect time, because the way we do it is we think, oh, here's a good idea for a use case, and then they go and look and see who's already figured out how to do it and buy them. So not at all to have missed the boat. Honestly, like the things we're looking at getting the most benefit, I think, as an industry is, I don't know. That's a narrow vision that I was just about to have. But I was going to say, like, we have these large data pools that need to be correlated, essentially, like between geological survey data and then all of the well logging and drilling data from the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of wells that we've drilled, then correlating that back to your survey data and understanding how to build more efficient wells, and using machine learning to say, okay, when you running under these parameters and doing these different things, you're able to basically look at the things that could increase or improve your recovery time or likelihood of drilling a successful well. I think those are probably where the big money is going after right now, if I had to guess.
But you have to have the data for it to work.
Yes, exactly. They have to have the data for it to work. So they're partnering with, the likes of Microsoft and Google directly and saying, hey, we want to work with you and our data that we have, because we have these massive petabytes. Yeah. We used to be collecting petabytes of data a year. So we have these data sets that I know that exist somewhere within company vaults that we would love to figure out how to synthesize into useful insights for our customers and clients, essentially, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100% makes sense. Yeah. I think
yeah, like, I mean, I used to, as a reliability engineer, go in and into a system we had. It was just, it had to have been by the time I was leaving, almost 1 million different logs of different runs of like well runs. And when we'd have a problem, we'd go and say, let's pull up by like the I just lost the longitude and latitude. Let's pull up by the longitude and latitude where we're at. All right, let's find me 100 other wells in the area that have been run, and boom, you could just like find them, and then you have to go manually and say, all right, let me find the stuff at the right depth and like correlate all this and see, all right, how is this tool ran versus everything else that was in the area, and how did it perform, and a lot of very manual data slicing and analyzing, and I just know that like that is now like so achievable to be replicated, you know, on an automated way. I don't know. How do we build that out? If we can figure that out, I know some people.
I mean, you know, a very simple strategy that has worked for years and I think is still working is you build a highly niched piece of software, prove that it works, get some paying clients, get your ARR to a particular number, and then sell on a really healthy multiple on ARR.
Yeah, that's the dream,
nuts.
Right?
It is to much. Yeah, exactly. But to know what problems need solved and what problems are worth money to be solved, has always been like it's like an insider's game to some extent. I mean, either you're just bloody brilliant or you're out in consumer land, which is much more cutthroat and difficult to build something there, right? But B2B, it's like if you get to 1,000 customers on a really, really useful B2B software, because you're charging very good money for it and you give good support.
Go get Constellation knocking on your door.
Yeah, something. Constellation, Vista, Equity, or Strategic, like you guys.
Yeah.
So let's build it.
Yeah. So what we're saying is we need some use cases.
Yeah, or you know, a pile of demo data. Doesn't even need to be real. It just needs to look a lot like what the people have that you're selling to.
And so what are you thinking of? You're talking more from the pure automation, the workflow automation standpoint when you're thinking this stuff. Are you actually thinking of like building off of taking a foundational model and then trying to build specialized models off of the foundational model?
Yeah, no, the second one. I think being like an automation agency is like printing money right now, but I don't think it lasts very long. Being more strategic, like being able to go walk into a company that's got, let's say it's small, even 250 million in revenue, right? Means they're, you know, of plenty size to be throwing around money at potential growth levers. And your software comes in and says, you've got some things that you don't know what to do with and you don't know how to value. We know how to mine that for you and turn it into some small bets of value or that over time compound and don't cost you headcount. That's like a home run for most middle and upper managers, you know?
Yeah, it really is.
And I don't know how real that is, but like, I know it's real. It's just finding the correct hit, I think is, you know, it would take some time or intimate knowledge of a particular industry and its data.
Yeah. And I feel like at a certain scale, those companies that once they hit that scale, they're just going to Microsoft or
for what?
For a lot of these solutions directly.
You think so? Copilot's going to be able to like look at your mining data and draw correlations on what this next mine presents as a set of opportunities?
No. But what I'm saying is we have a partnership, or they have partnerships with Microsoft to develop with, you know, Microsoft's help with different foundational models, like specific use cases. Like the big boys are, I think, in a lot of ways, that's my impression. I see where there's problems with this, because I'm sure somebody at a small, more agile level could do it in a different, maybe more effective way. But I think like when you're talking an organization size of 50,000 plus people that have already these partnerships with Google, Microsoft, Amazon Web, web doing a lot.
Yeah. So let's go down market from that. Let's go to the driller or the oil well owner who, is still just a little bit cowboy.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. You have, I think we like, there's a threshold of company size where you have to hit. That's what I was trying to get to, Dan. I'm sorry. Yeah. So like
that's why I picked 250 million revenue. I don't know enough about oil and gas to be able to tell you if that's like a huge and like completely solidified organization with like top-notch cybersecurity and data rule sets, blah blah blah.
Yeah, there are a lot of data privacy issues that we have to deal with. I will say that, because a lot of this data is considered very proprietary, depending upon what it is. But now for an operator, the stuff they're doing, maybe not. I don't know. It could be.
Depends on what their goal is. If their goal is to exit because they were better at picking the right wells, and they were, and then they exit to Exxon or whatever, then they're good. Your software is no longer needed. They made a bank. Your software made bank because you probably onboarded enough cowboys to sell it to someone, a strategic, or Vista, who is then able to like have a larger organization make the software package more mature or plug into OpenAI and Microsoft, or I don't know. I'm being unrealistic at this point. I'm not sure.
No, I think every industry probably has a use case or two, right? It's finding what it is, and how do you get then the access to the data that you would need to for the specific use case, and what kind of data would you actually need to solve their problem is also the question.
How are you going to be able to provide the value?
You'd almost need to find somebody to partner with pretty early on to have access just to their data, because otherwise,
that or be intimately familiar with what the data looks like, and you can make up bogus data just to be able to demonstrate like, this is the data set that we have. This is what's in there. None of it's real, but we're going to draw we're going to show you how it draws correlations. And if you give us access to your data for 5 hours, I'll be able to give you the same stuff. Because the engine that sits on top doesn't change, right?
I'm going to have to think about that. To think on that, because there's got to be like, I just need to like, that's where I want to get my lens at right now for a while, is just like looking at,
ask your subconscious.
Where's the application? Where's the application? Because I'm sure if it's going to pop up eventually, I'm like, oh, that's a, maybe dumb but good idea. It's niche, but that's enough people would need that. I just need to be constantly asking that question to myself.
Yeah. Niche is where you can be a minnow and play.
Yeah, exactly. That's
from my lifestyle standpoints, I don't need to be much bigger than a minnow. Like, some of the payouts on these things are, for other people are very small, but for us would be enormous. And
okay, I have one of those. I have one for a mid-sized company working with a larger company that has to work with their that company's AP payment systems. Like for example, Ariba with SAP, very painful, very difficult to do error-free the first time, because you always have to validate all these little fields, and like something like the shipping costs might have been updated, and there's constant things that are bounced back and forth because people just aren't good at checking little details. Give these suppliers, SAP, a tool on the front end when they're uploading their invoices to help automate the matching and prevent rejection and get things through the first time. So that way they're not, waiting for the net 70 days to actually kick in once the invoice is officially received.
I would suggest looking at Crew AI.
Crew AI? You
can build little agents. So like, I don't know if you can plug into SAP or whatever, but it seems like you ought to be able to. And
well, for like on that situation, like for our vendors, it's there to have a web portal, right? So it'd just be like, I think as long as you
do a webhook
interface with the web browser, you'd be fine.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you're just validating some numbers and you're trying to get rid of human error, and someone who sits there and just checks these things or whatever, they're gone in the next couple of years.
I have
you can have like 80 of these agents, and each agent only does one thing, and it does it really well.
I have
they're nearly free. Although I feel like the pricing on some of this stuff it's bound to go up, as it's going to go up before it comes back down.
There are some specific roles I know of that could be automated out given the right parameters. I mean, we have people that check documentation, for example. That's basically documents get scanned in, they go and they look and say, does property A, B, and C match what it's supposed to on this table? Yes, it does. Okay, it's good to go. That's all they're doing, essentially. Or saying, now I'm going to put this documents from part A, part B, and part C into this pack. They went together. Those ship together. And that could be very programmatically driven. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily need to be AI. That could just be programmatically driven, right? But you could use having some AI in there would help with certain cases of, especially on the deciphering if what is what and trying to match certain things. I think there's where just pure programmatic language doesn't work.
Yeah, but you could make the AI transform unstructured data to structured data and then do it programmatically.
Yeah, that's what you would do. That's exactly what you would do. It's just getting it in the right structure, right? That's why it. Yeah. Hey, yeah, Crew.ai has SAP logo on their flying by on their homepage.
There you go. There you go. Start automating away.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right.
So you can build all kinds of different automations on there, and it's kind of interesting.
Okay. I love that you're spending so much time and being able to give me all these tips.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. I feel like either get on it or get left behind in within the next 2 years.
You're probably right. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. Within maybe 5 years. I think maybe 2 years, maybe a little quick, but yeah.
I feel like I've been resistant to some of the more recent waves, labeling them as fads or something like that. And with this one, I'm like, nope, I'm not missing this one.
Yeah, I don't see how this one doesn't take hold.
I would like to capitalize on it in some manner. But the capitalization on it would be a bonus to the fact that I'm just going to plug into it, because I think if I don't, then I'm straight up left behind.
Interesting. I mean, well, yeah, because now's the time if you want to do what you're doing. If you want to do what you say what you want to do, now is the only time you're going to be able to do that, right? Because in a few years, it will be people have developed skills and specializations, and
it'll all have been built out. I mean, it was like the last when we discussed last time, like one of my predictions for the future or this year or whatever is like, just take all the crappy apps that have some amount of MRR, and they're all going to get transformed, because now there's an army of people who don't necessarily need to really know how to code well. They can just be technical enough, and they can go build a new app. And like the whole app store could be turned over in the next 5 years.
That's true.
As long as there's some money flowing, there's opportunity, and people will eke it out. They're just gonna eat up the little fish food until it's gone.
Yeah. Well, eat up the little fish food till it's gone. That's a good way to put it. It'll just be
give me 3 or 4 streams of fish food in my life, and I'm good to go.
Yeah. That's all you need. That's all you need.
Yeah.
I guess I wonder at what point, if you're using these tools that you were talking about, Cursor, Lovable, or Crew, and you're starting to build these things out, like why don't they just go downstream and then start to eat up that themselves at some point?
What do you mean go downstream?
Well, like, so you're
because I think that's the difference between building the software versus being an agency.
Okay.
Right? Like Cursor is in the business of building Cursor.
Okay.
And charging money for it and continuing to make it a better product. There will be agencies built off the backs of Cursor, but I don't think Cursor is going to build their own agency necessarily. They're too busy building Cursor. The moment they decide to do something else means cursor will get eaten up.
Fair.
I think.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here too much looking at this website that you sent me to. Now I got my headspace back right.
Crew? You still looking at Crew?
Yeah.
What ideas are coming to you?
I was still looking at Crew. Yeah, there's some good stuff on there. I need to go poke around off air. Are you doing this on just like your are you doing this on your Mac directly, or any of this stuff you're doing on a tablet or on other interfaces? All
Computer. Yeah, with a full keyboard and all that. Yeah. Multiple monitors. It's much easier to work with ChatGPT on one side or Claude on one side and then the IDE on the other.
For answering these types of questions, do you find GPT or Claude to be more proficient?
Okay. Everyone, it seems to be some sort of agreement that Claude is better.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is the ChatGPT product is better, and I think that's not a comment on the LLM or the results.
No, it's the user interface.
Yes, it's like being able to use it. ChatGPT connects to the internet. I can upload a bunch of stuff to it, and it analyzes it. The Mac OS app is like native and really, really good. So I use it more because I use it more quickly, and it, I can give it a link to something on the internet, and it looks it up.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it takes in the whole of the web page. If I want Claude to do the same thing, then I'm copying all the text out and downloading all of the image. Like at least this is how I've figured out how to do it so far, because it keeps telling me can't and won't connect to the internet. So I can't have it consume a web page the way I would like to have it consume a web page.
That's for what you're doing, that's critical. So then clearly ChatGPT is the winner for that use case. But perhaps the LLM on Claude might be a little better, more accurate. I don't know,
I don't know if accurate is like a not right word for it.
Yeah.
But higher level results in some way, I think would express the difference.
Okay.
But which is to say, I'm testing both because I'm testing both. I'm testing my ability to get the LLM the information I need it to have in order to make its analysis. Testing different ways to do that because both products are very different and how they allow for it. And then the actual output of that analysis is another step.
That tracks the quality of the analysis and comparing data sets or comparing information or doing what, that you would actually get better results out of a different LLM. I think.
Yeah. And one of my next step is to how do I know this is possible. I just haven't gotten there yet. Is can
you make GPT talk to Claude and then say put all this into Claude for me?
And then they start planning to take over the world. No, you can't, because Claude doesn't talk to the internet or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I want to be able to do, I know it's possible, I just haven't figured it out yet, is I want a very specifically trained GPT. And part of the reason I haven't tackled it is because if you do that, you need the training data, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to take me hours to come up with the correct data of this is what bad looks like, this is what medium looks like, this is what great looks like, and having 100 examples of each of those 3 grade levels, if you will. That's going to take me hours to get. Mm-hmm. But then what I want to be able to do is train a GPT on that, and then via API plug into that specific GPT, so that I can productize that sort of grading system, if you will.
So, and that
without releasing any.
Can I ask what kind of data, that source data you're looking at? Are you talking about sales data? Are you talking about product review data? Or if you don't want to answer that, you don't have to. That's fine. Fair enough. I was just curious.
I think if I answered it, it would give it away. Yeah.
Fair enough. Then I'll shut up.
Off air. Not that it's some sort of hyper stealth thing. It's I'm telling everyone who will listen about it, but I can't bring myself to broadcast it.
Oh, I get it. Wait till you get a proof of concept out there and something to point people to, right? So you can say, "Here's what I'm talking about."
I want feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely, totally fair. All right. Well,
shall we call it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Good hanging out. Good seeing you.
Absolutely. We'll see you again, I guess, in the new year. Until then, stay safe, stay warm, and
Party
I guess
hard.
best wishes for New Year's Day and good wishes to everybody out there in podcast land.
Cool. See y'all.